With the release of the Captain Marvel movie a while back, there was a flurry of conservative Christians lamenting for the good old days. One blogger wrote, "Where else can this lucrative ideology, which contrasts so unapologetically with reality, go to be sustained if not to an alternative universe?" And, as I consider Disney's new depiction of femininity in Captain Marvel, I cannot help but mourn. Let me sidestep what appears to be a total overreaction to a fictional superhero movie, and focus on something I find more interesting. Near the end of the article, it was claimed, as it always is in many circles that heavily advocate traditional gender roles, that the differences in their understanding of men and women, at least as they understand those terms, have nothing to do with competency. But can this really be consistently claimed while holding to the doctrine of biblical inerrancy? No. It can't. Let's use 1 Timothy 2, 11-15 as a test case. "Let a woman learn quietly with all submissiveness. I do not permit a woman to teach or to exercise authority over a man. Rather, she is to remain quiet. For Adam was formed first, then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived and became a transgressor. Yet she will be saved through childbearing, if they continue in faith and love and holiness with self-control." What I aim to show is that those who hold to an inerrant Bible apply their arguments for historical continuity and plain reading selectively. For example, Bryan Chapell argues that this is the historic interpretation of the passage, and that other interpretations began flooding in after the women's movement in the 60s as a result of a shift in the spirit of the age. But what does he do when he gets to the end of the passage? He claims that, quote, "We miss the point of verse 14 entirely if we think that Eve was more gullible than Adam, and that is why she was deceived and became a transgressor." Unquote. The irony should be obvious here. He just finished upholding the value of going with the historical interpretation in the face of the spirit of the age, but can't bring himself to follow his own advice with regard to verse 14. This kind of tap dancing utilizes a plain reading and stands in line with historical theology in one verse, but ignores both in the next, enabling people like the writer of the Captain Marvel hit piece to try to have his complementarian cake and eat it too. Women shouldn't lead in many spheres, but it has nothing to do with their competency. It's obvious even among conservatives that there are two reasons given for women's subordination in this passage: creation and the deception of Eve. The ESV Study Bible points out as much, but can't bring itself to elaborate too much further on the second reason. And that's because it's pretty clear what's going on. And plainly elaborating on the point doesn't look very good. Thom explains, quote, "Some inerrantists accept this basic picture and comply with the author's imperative, refusing to place women in teaching roles in the church. Yet, Mark Driscoll notwithstanding, one would be hard-pressed to find many professing inerrantists who are willing to verbally consent to the author's expressed justification for this policy. To do so, they would have to acquiesce to the notion that women are inherently intellectually inferior to men. That is what the author is claiming, because Eve was deceived and not Adam. Therefore, women cannot be trusted in positions of authority." Unquote. This is how stuff was interpreted in the past. For example, Aquinas argued that, quote, "As a rule, women are not perfected in wisdom, so as to be fit to be entrusted with public teaching," unquote. While Calvin admitted that Adam was the federal head of humanity and was guilty along with his wife, he also said, quote, "It is certain Eve was attacked first, because Satan, among his other ruses, knew woman would be won over more quickly," unquote. In other places, he makes it clear that the reason this would be the case is that women are frailer. Historical examples could be multiplied. Now, thankfully, more people are trying to distance themselves from this kind of rhetoric, at least on the surface. But that's because the inerrantists who do so are cherry-picking to avoid having to affirm a colossally dumb position on women. That would make their current positions on women look stupider than they already are. In reality, we should see this as another example of a biblical error, which isn't surprising because the Bible isn't special in the way many people need it to be. Tap this video next to me and I'll explain.